But this also applies to who you work with, right? You as a brand should know, like, and trust the creators that you're working with to facilitate the best partnership possible. Just thrilled to be here today on a beautiful day in New York City. Also along with the folks joining on the live stream. Let's just kind of like jump in and start talking, shop here, what's going on in the industry. Just wanted to kind of kick off and just talk about what we've been up to over the last number of years. I really feel that Impact.com, we've been on a journey to define partnerships. And it kind of makes me think back to when we first had to explain what a partnership even was to a business. And you fast forward to today, and partnerships are everywhere, and they've become invaluable to the modern buyer's journey. And this journey, it's no longer unilateral, right, or built on trusting what a brand says about themselves. The modern buyer requires social validation. They require recommendations before they even consider buying a product. People respond well to a KLT strategy. It stands for know, like, and trust. And it means that people are more likely to buy something if they truly know, like, and trust someone who recommends it. In fact, 89% of people trust recommendations over any other channel. And as people are spending more and more time online, these recommendations are coming from familiar online faces that they feel they know. And all of us in this room believe in partnerships, and we understand their value, but how can we make the most of this channel? As we look ahead, there's at least 3 top trends that we should all be investing in this year, right? And to make it easy, we can think of them as the 3 C's, or the secrets for this year for the partnership economy. And note that we may be the only keynote this year that isn't including Gen AI in their top list for top trends for this year. But the fact is, it is being woven into every aspect of product experiences, operations within businesses, for many companies, including Impact.com. And Max, our Chief Product Officer, will be covering that during his session here in just a little bit, so hang tight for that. So for this first trend I want to call out this year, you may have guessed it, is creators, right? Whoops, did I skip one? Is creators. The influencer or creator industry, it certainly isn't new, but I think that the explosive growth has just really made it impossible to ignore. I think we're off, there we go. You fixed it, appreciate it. And so, to put this in perspective, take a look at last year. Influencer marketing was a 16.4 billion USD industry. And you take a look now, it's projected over the next 6 years to reach 84 billion USD by 2028. That's a 5x increase in 6 years. In a survey by Advertiser Perceptions, more than half of brand respondents said that they plan to increase their influencer marketing budgets this year. And what they're doing is they're pulling from other traditional channels. They're pulling from their TV ads, prints, and out of home. And so the fact is, money is following the customer. And a whopping 84% of shoppers have made a purchase based on a creator's recommendation. And the brilliance of partnering with creators, be it TikTokers, YouTubers, podcasters, other social media influencers, is the fact that they're seamlessly integrating themselves into your daily life. You may have heard me say before that people go online for just 3 things. They're looking for entertainment, they're looking for information, and they're looking for connections with other people. And with creator content, the beauty of it is that these 3 desires have actually been combined. So when watching a TikTok video, for example, you can simultaneously feel entertained by the content. You can feel informed about the products and the services that you're discovering, and crucially feel connected to someone who you trust and enjoy following, as well as within the community of comments that you can experience on these platforms. It's a great example of what it feels like to experience a KLT strategy, because you're receiving product recommendations from people who you know, like, and trust. So it's no secret that brands should be establishing partnerships with creators in order to stay both relevant to how people are making buying decisions today, but also to reach their business growth goals. But how? My first suggestion is to stop thinking about creators as just purely top-of-funnel partners that are driving impressions and brand awareness. Believe it or not, 30% of marketers do not measure ROI from their influencer marketing campaigns, meaning they are not accurately capturing the influence that certain creators have on sales, and so therefore they can't motivate them to keep going. It is critical to determine the incremental value of a creator so that you can identify points of value along the full funnel, especially considering that creators typically play a stronger role in the upper funnel events. And then you need the insights and the flexibility to contract dynamically with your creators to encourage these long-term relationships and sustainable business value on both sides of the table. What I'm challenging you to do is embrace the convergence of traditional affiliate marketing with creator partnerships and how you can balance a performance strategy with your creator relationships. And this convergence, for a lot of us, requires us to think about this partnership type differently. If you're coming from traditional affiliate background, I'm looking at Paresh over there, we need to stop, trying to jam a square peg. I'm not calling you out specifically on this. You're someone who's been in affiliate for a long time. We can't keep jamming a square peg into a round hole, right? And leading with a performance-only contract, right? The fact is, creators are putting in a lot of upfront time and production work to create their commerce content, and they're not going to be fully motivated to do this effectively by operating solely on a performance-based contract, at least at the start of the relationship. On the other hand, for those who have been primarily working with creators for the past few years, it's also very limiting to confine them to just a fixed fee payment model that is typically short-term in nature. So especially when considering that this content can exist for years out there and still add value, especially on longer form platforms like YouTube. What's recommended is that you utilize a post-plus compensation model, where you pay creators a flat fee to post content initially, and then you can combine that with a performance-based contract over a longer period of time. And speaking with Maddie B. Webb, she's a TikTok creator with millions of followers, she explained that this type of compensation allows her to be a marketer, creating brand awareness, but also as a salesperson, ultimately driving sales. And she's certainly not alone. There's 82% of the creators that we surveyed with Adweek, they agreed with this post-plus model. And these long-term partnerships are better perceived by the audience because they see their favorite creator talking about a product consistently instead of a single time-based campaign or a one-and-done transactional post that they might do. So my second suggestion is to consider how you can make the most of your creator partnerships. Think about it this way. If you as a brand were to create high-fidelity marketing assets, kind of like a product video, it's going to typically be very time-consuming and expensive. Well, when you partner with a creator, they're actually producing these high-quality assets for you, right? So if you already have this fantastic content, you should absolutely think about how to repurpose it in your other marketing channels so you can diversify your strategy and really utilize your partnership assets here. The best way to do this is to license your creator content and agree on a set of terms here at the start of the relationship so you can leverage these assets across your paid ads, your website, your customer marketing, and more. This UGC or user-generated content, it can go a long way in aiding your other marketing goals, essentially. So there's a lot of brands who are doing this. They're seeing a high success rate. About 87% of brands are using UGC, and 72% of them, so the majority, say that it boosts engagement. So going into your creator partnerships with this efficient mindset will help you down the line. And as always, I recommend forming direct relationships and direct contracts with your partners, which will drive the most innovation and value in the partnership for both sides. Right? This is opposed to going through networks or just buying ads through the social media platforms. Networks especially are only leasing access to creators and publishers with very limited visibility about exactly what they're doing. So don't put a middle person between you and the creator. Go straight to your partners and build deeper relationships with them. And note, we've been talking a lot about a KLT approach, but this also applies to who you work with. Right? You as a brand should know, like, and trust the creators that you're working with to facilitate the best partnership possible. Right? After all, these guys are humanizing commerce in an increasingly digital world, and they're doing so on your behalf. And this is what makes the partnerships channel unique, right? Not as popular performance pricing model. All right, the second secret or trend that we're experiencing in the partnership economy this year is commerce content. What is it exactly? Commerce content, by definition, is publisher-produced editorial content about a brand, product, or service. And these pieces of content can take the form of product reviews, roundups, listicles, that sort of thing. And increasingly, these publishers are monetizing not through ads, they're monetizing through traditional affiliate links. This partnership type is crucial to implement, as 9 out of 10 people are reading reviews before making a purchase. And the interesting thing about commerce content is the way that it's evolved over the years. The first known magazine ad in the US was published in 1741 with Benjamin Franklin's General Magazine. It just blows my mind that this was 300 years ago. So for the last 300 years, publishers have been primarily monetizing their content with ads that they've inserted in pages between their content, right? And you look now, popular content itself is commercial in nature, right? And it's including seamlessly integrated affiliate links, And this is the result of the direct partnerships that these commerce content publishers have with the brands that they're writing about, and it's become a critical monetization strategy for these publishers. These next two quotes really sum up the paradigm shift that's happened recently in the publishing industry. So Emily Jackson, VP of e-commerce at Forbes, said, "The commerce business at Forbes is one of the fastest growing consumer revenue business lines, and it continues to be a pretty big area of investment for the company." Chris Lloyd, VP and GM of Review, they're part of the USA Today network, says, "For us, commerce content is increasingly important, and so much so that we went ad-free on January 1st. And Chris is going to be up on stage here later today, and he's going to talk a little bit more about that. It's a huge inflection point in terms of how people are engaging with commerce content and how publishers are both publishing and monetizing this content. We've watched this partnership type steadily tick upwards, and so last year we interviewed a variety of brands to understand how they benefit from commerce content. 90% of brands experienced increased brand awareness, 81% experienced increased revenue, and 65% experienced increased customer acquisition. So how can you, as a brand, form an effective commerce content partnership and reap these kinds of benefits? There's a few crucial pieces to consider here. First, find the publishers that target your audience in particular. Right? Ideally, you want your target customer to discover this content a bit organically. Right? Second, create a strong pitch for your product or services. Right? You want to approach publishers with this. Right? This is your chance to kind of share your brand differentiators, relevant trend data, audience overlap, and of course, compensation. And then finally, pitch to publishers at the right time. Right? Consider the seasonality of your product as well as the seasonal priorities of the publisher to cover it now versus later. The timing of your commerce content pieces with these events is going to make the publisher partner is a little bit more motivated to promote you, and it's also going to improve your conversion rates. Neela Ali, she's the former EVP of commerce at BuzzFeed. She told me during a podcast interview that you should talk about the timing of when publishers write about things, that no doesn't necessarily mean never, it may just mean not now. So when you think about it, it's really not too different from a PR motion where your goal is to get the media excited about your business without trying to completely dictate their entire opinions and quotes and timing. An example of a brand who does this really well is Apollo Neuro. They're a wearable stress relief device company. They utilize commerce content to provide further education about their product. And so here we're showing you Hearst Magazine's Prevention Magazine. In terms of them pursuing them, it's a publication that just makes sense. It's a publication focused on health, wellness, fitness. And they know that long-form reviews really help to explain the science behind their company, their benefits, their differentiators, way better than an ad ever could. So Ian from Apollo Neuro is going to be on stage with me next, and he's going to talk a little bit more about that. All right, so the third and the final secret is control, or rather realizing and embracing the fact that you as a brand are no longer in control. The customer is. Right? At the end of the day, no amount of tips or tricks are going to work unless you think and act through the eyes of the modern buyer. They are technologically savvy. They're typically utilizing multiple forms of social media, browsing sites, apps, and have gotten really used to consuming massive amounts of commercial information on a daily basis. And it used to be that brands would keep people relatively captive with how people found out about the brands or about their products and controlling all that. But today, the genie's out of the bottle, right? People know that first of all, they're demanding and they're finding information. They're just kind of going after it, and they're finding out about information about you from other people. And so if you as a brand want to cut through and relate to buyers in the way that they want to discover, how they want to learn, how they want to communicate about products, you've got to let go and you've got to get out of this traditional advertising mindset and listen to your partners. Realize that your partners have successfully built their audience for a reason, because they're good at reaching the modern buyer. So if you try too hard to dictate their content and their messaging, it will come across as a untrustworthy and disingenuous ad, which nobody wants to be associated with anymore. Again, what makes the partnership channel unique is not the popular performance pricing model. It's the fact that you're trusting another person or another business to use their expertise, their connection with the customer to recommend you. This is what it's all about. And I say this realizing that it requires brands to step up today and operate at a higher level of quality and service, but that is the new requirement. Commercial content is just now accessible anywhere and everywhere. And as a brand, you need to inspire and inform this content as much as possible through your partnership program. Also, your partners are experts at competing in an increasingly algorithm-based world. next time you're on a social media app, I encourage you to pay attention to how many posts are from people who you don't actually follow. Instagram's been pushing this suggested content since at the end of 2020. Other platforms like TikTok have basically, their entire foundation is based on an algorithm generated for you page. Right, this is important to call out because creators can no longer just take any type of content that you're dictating and have their followers see it. Now, they've got to work extra hard to create high quality content and authentic content that's going to cut through this algorithm controlled model. So when you come in and you try and micromanage their work and control how they talk about you, you risk their audience engagement as well as your brand impressions and your conversions. Like in the same way that you wouldn't invite a famous chef over to your house and then dictate the ingredients and tell them how to cook your dinner, you shouldn't be doing this to your brand partners either. Sure, you'd tell them your dietary preferences, any severe allergies that you've got, kind of like you'd give brand guidelines to a publisher or a creator, but you'd let them cook the meal in the way that they know how, because that's why you like them in the first place, right? And if you can adapt this new way of thinking, you're going to set yourself up for partnerships and get people to truly know, like, and trust your brand. I hope you feel as excited as I do about the potential for new growth opportunities like this and more in the partnership economy. There's so much to take advantage of in this channel now more than ever, and I'm confident that if you embrace these trends, you're going to drive growth for your business. And I especially see real proof of this with newer companies who have built their brands through partnerships with creators, podcasters, publishers, traditional rewards affiliates, even with other businesses. And a lot of these newer companies actually start with partnerships. And then they invest in other channels, such as advertising, only after they've established their online presence through partnerships. And these brands realize that there's no sense wasting these awareness ad dollars when the very next step of the modern buyer is to get online and see what other people have to say about them. And the worst scenario is when those ads drive demand for a new product only to lose the sale to a competitor who has a more effective partnership strategy deployed. This is a real risk. As we all know, there's a massive amount of commercial information that's available to the buyer today, especially compared to just a few years ago. So for those of us who have been in this industry for a long time, the shift in mindset is pivotal for partnerships. It's another sign of the new economy that we're in. And this leads me to welcoming Ian McGlumphy to the stage. Ian's an expert in all things partnerships. And Apollo Neuro, his company, is a great example of someone who's utilized this partner-first and partner-led strategy. So welcome to the stage, Ian.
Hello, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Good morning. Yeah, welcome. All right, I thought we could set the stage maybe and just tell people a little bit about Apollo Neuro.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll do a little product placement while I'm doing it as well. So Apollo Neuro is a wellness wearable that focuses on stress relief and improving the body's resilience to stress, which you're actually going to see in direct improvements of, say, your sleep, your focus, and your overall well-being. So the device itself works by sending soothing, gentle vibrations through this pod. Your body interprets that as a sense of touch. So think about how imperative touch is to make you feel safe, grounded, and in control. What we're seeing at the autonomic nervous system level is engagement with your parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest. You get those same similar benefits to doing almost a mindful practice, like, say, meditation or deep breathing or yoga. So we're passively giving you the benefits of, say, a mindful practice throughout your day just by wearing this device. The device was originally developed out of the University of Pittsburgh medical community. Our co-founder and CIO, who is the co-inventor as well, is a board-certified psychiatrist and neuroscientist. So we're steeped in science, and it was originally developed for treatment-resistant PTSD patients. So that's an audience who's always in this fight or flight response, needing to get into their rest and digest to kind of have breakthroughs in focus and sleep and things along those lines as well. We launched February of 2020, which was an interesting time, obviously pre-pandemic, just to launch a stress relief wearable. So just around 3 years now, and we just exceeded 100,000 users as of last month.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Fascinating technology, and I think I shared with you when you and I first met that my wife is a bit of a biohacker, and she's been wearing this device around her ankle, and I never knew what it was until I met you. I just jokingly around the house called it her house arrest tracker.
Yeah, of course.
And then Ian kind of caught me up on what this thing was, and so along those lines, there's a number of wearable companies out there. I think of Fitbit, Apple Watch, Whoop. How do you compare? Do you find yourself in that same category, or how do you differentiate?
So most start out thinking that we're kind of in this kind of, which we are, in this kind of wearable bubble. The wearable space is mostly kind of dominated and saturated by these biometric trackers. So again, Aura, Apple Watch, Fitbit, Whoop. We are actually not a tracker. There's no sensors on the underside of this device. So I lovingly refer to Apollo as intervention technology, or like wearable 3.0, because what we're going to be doing is actually improving the biometrics read by these trackers. So interestingly enough, as you know, in all of the marketing minds in this room can kind of see where I'm going with this, what we're starting to do is actually follow the roads made by these trackers, and then we jump in and say, oh, well, we actually can intervene and actually improve the biometrics read by these types of devices as well. So we're actually not a competitor to them. They're a complement because they prove the efficacy of Apollo. You're going to see better sleep scores with your Aura Ring or your Apple Watch using this device. Or you're going to see better resting heart rates and things along those lines, or improvements in your heart rate variability, which again are key biometrics for this resilience to stress.
Okay, so I think Apollo Neuro, is it 3 years old as a company?
That's right, yep, 2020.
So new product, new brand coming into kind of I wouldn't say a saturated market, but there's other companies with wearables, something related to what you're doing at least. Very difficult message to get across. A lot of science behind it. Yeah. Relatively new subcategory almost within wearables. Is that? I mean, I can imagine like trying to get that message out with a TV ad or a display ad might be difficult, right? Is that where the concept of starting with partners?
Absolutely, and you kind of touched on it in your previous point too. What we were trying to do is actually find validation that was outside of marketing, Apollo's own marketing channels, to kind of help us with brand awareness around our launch. And what we actually chose was specifically looking at highly niche audiences who might already be receptive to a technology like ours. So again, I was kind of following those paths made by the trackers. I found that the biohacking community, obviously your wife being one of them as well, they are very, very receptive to anything that gets them to the next stages of human optimization. Be those technology in terms of emerging tech like our own, and again, I refer to them lovingly generally, but it's the idea here is that these are people who are willing to do anything to get this optimization. They're eating raw cow organs, they're stunning weird parts of their body. They're kind of really interested in the next wave of human optimization. So they kind of cut at any cost, or they won't cut any cost to get there. So I was going to these spaces that we knew had already been very religious with their usage of a biometric tracker, and we were kind of inserting ourselves in those spaces. So one example is Ben Greenfield, who runs a large podcast and kind of a media company as well. And what we were doing is actually having our co-founder, Dr. David Rabin, who I'd mentioned, again, board-certified psychiatrist, neuroscientist, so he can really talk the talk, and he can also really help explain the device on these types of podcasts. So our launch was getting him onto these podcasts, and then we would actually that would kind of be our foot in, or the Trojan horse in, for us to then create an affiliate relationship with these podcasters. So we would have Dr. Dave on the show. He would help explain the technology, introduce it to them, and then we would actually kind of spearhead it with the idea of, well, let's make this an affiliate relationship. Let's tag on promo codes onto this exact episode where we're talking about Apollo, where you're going to get incentivized and compensated. And then we also found ourselves doing tack on other programmatic after that with, say, newsletter buys or blog pieces and things along those lines with those types of groups who then kind of become a media house. And then we kind of just create a lasting relationship with them overall and continue to go back time and time again.
Mm-hmm. So, you mentioned that you're at 100 million?
100,000.
100,000.
Well, we'll get there, yeah.
So still maybe in still maybe in the early adopter phase potentially.
Definitely.
And so I would say, especially with that phase of a company's evolution, keying in on like people like Ben Greenfield, people like my wife listen to him. Like he's someone that she knows, she likes, she trusts. So if he's out there talking about it, she's probably going to try it.
Exactly. Yeah, and that was kind of the mentality for us too. And I would say ultimately from that side, we kind of create some great everlasting relationships with these groups too, because they were kind of invested in us in a way at the launch, and they kind of have this long form relationship with us that's a little bit deeper than most. So we kind of get a chance to kind of go back to them and kind of test content. Mm-hmm. And I think another thing that I wanted to mention too is that we also invested a lot in these type of long form review. I would call them like mid-tier partners who are willing to kind of do pages and pages of reviews of things. Mm-hmm. We kind of bet on them like horses, if you will, at the very beginning, thinking that they were going to kind of help take over some of the SEO gameplay for us, because that us specifically, we're a device and we're a technology that takes a long time for a consumer to really buy into and want to purchase. The customer journey is not a short one at all. So what we really wanted to do was maybe create a web or create a net for them to kind of find their way of Apollo on non-Apollo domains. Because again, they're researching the device, they're looking at reviews, they're looking for kind of other forms of technology and other forms of research as well. So it really kind of played hand in hand in that space.
Yeah, so I'd say, we talked a little bit about this. Like, I think people at the end of the day just want, you talk about information that's not on Apollo's site, right? I think at the end of the day, people just want somebody to shoot them straight, no BS. Tell me what the real deal is, especially on a new device like this. But aside from social validation, just any other benefits that you can point to with a partner-led strategy?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I would say the partner space is very ripe for testing new messaging. It's actually a place that I would test new messaging before I'm doing it in other type of marketing channels as well. So a really good partner of ours that we've worked with is CNN Underscored. Again, on more of obviously a larger premium publisher type of style of range here, but we've had an ongoing kind of almost a quarterly relationship with them, and we are constantly testing new messaging with them to see what resonates most, because their audience base is much different than this biohacking community, and they're actually a little bit more into the general public. So we're able to kind of see what is this most sticky type of messaging for us, and then we can take that back over to, say, our landing page, our CRO, our SEO efforts, and even our paid social and things along those lines. So we're kind of using these partnerships as the first wave of testing new ideas, and then really kind of being able to kind of position in that and feed other channels with that information.
So speaking of other channels, I talked a little bit in my opening remarks about not wasting money on awareness dollars when the first thing people are going to do is like get online and start trying to hear from other people about you. So could you maybe share a little bit about your total kind of program mix? I mean, I have to imagine there's a concert effect, a surround sound of how you're looking to acquire customers.
Absolutely, and I mean, all of us kind of will understand this kind of phrase that I've kind of constantly say, but I mean, partnerships is an umbrella term, right? Like, we kind of lump in our style of newsletter partners, podcasts, affiliates, these review sites, these premium publishers, even content creators in the influencer space as well. They're all partnerships. And once again, you're kind of getting a real chance to kind of test different messaging across all of those different forums. And you're also, Apollo really lends itself to it, so I'm a little bit lucky in that regard, that we can speak to the benefits of Apollo for sleep. So we'll go full in on that. We'll go to the mattress and the sleep review sites with listicles and whatnot too. And then we'll also be able to speak to the biohacking community who are more interested in the benefits of Apollo for physical performance and recovery. So I'm kind of lucky to have this palette to kind of test all these different styles of verticals. But what I'm trying to do is create this web when you're looking for Apollo Neuro reviews, that at least one of those are going to satiate the need of what you're looking for to make the purchase. So again, you're looking up the reviews on Google or whatnot, or any search engine, and I want there to be at least 1 or 3 reviews that are going to speak specifically to you and kind of create that stickiness for you to kind of, again, move along that customer journey, because once again, we know that this is a high-end device. It retails for $349. So a lot of kind of interest level, reading about the research and the technology and stuff like that is kind of typical from all of our customers.
So that's a pretty diverse partner mix, and that's great to hear, but it really does beg the question on like, how do you compensate some of those different types of partners?
Sure. Also
curious, in the same vein, like how you think about attribution.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say there's a variety in the way that we compensate. The way I kind of explained it in the very upfront with some of those podcasters that we first worked with launch, we found ourselves mostly setting them up as affiliates and then doing hybrid deals with them after. So I'm doing a little bit of a flat fee for them to kind of place into a newsletter, but then they're also constantly getting continuously incentivized by the CPA. Those specific type of styles really drove them, specifically if it's something that is evergreen. So again, these podcasts, they're living for forever. People are kind of finding their way back to them. So that kind of ongoing CPA incentivization is something that they really enjoy. But then they're also looking to kind of be compensated on the upfront for, say, newsletter placements again, or say additional content across, gift guides and whatnot. So we do find ourselves doing predominantly hybrid style modeling with a lot of these groups. And I would say in the space of attribution, every partner deserves a piece of what they're actually kind of responsible for in this space. And attribution is obviously, something that we've all, I'm sure, had in-depth conversations with many people about. And interestingly enough, I love using the Impact platform, not just for my affiliates, but for all of my partners, even non-affiliate partners. I'm throwing them on there for 0% CPA because of the contribution modeling that you guys have. The introductory, the influence and the close. There's something really to be said in that space, because again, you're missing some of that in some of your GA analytics, and don't get me started on meta. So there's a whole different world out there now where we're actually trying to use, find more of a source of truth in this world of attribution, which is more and more difficult by the day. I mean, you guys all know that too. And one other tactic that we've been introducing as well is doing lift tests. So I'll turn channels on and off, and I will be able to at least give them a little bit of an idea as to what's really driving. Because again, we all look into GA, and direct organic is massive. And we're trying to figure out, well, is this kind of on the side of, say, my podcast that I've been placing? Is this the newsletters? Because again, there's a lot of different activities that a lot of consumers are doing now too that, they're blocking trackers, they're blocking things along those lines as well. But ultimately, I would find that, that's a really interesting space for us to play in these lift tests. And then lastly, one of the things that we've been implementing a lot of is post-purchase surveying. So, how did you hear about us after the close? A really interesting one, I think I mentioned this to you too, Dave, was that podcasts seem to be the most memorable thing that drives a lot of our consumers' purchases. But it is not being well attributed in any of our channels. So it leaves you kind of the question of, maybe that was the introduction and that was the most memorable part of the journey for the customer. But again, they're not necessarily getting the credit that maybe it's deserving there.
Yeah, that is the challenge with the attribution. It's not a perfect science.
Right.
It's looking at the blend of everything. But it's good to have the data and keep iterating, keep evolving. So I think the way you talk about your compensation model being a hybrid, I think that's a good example of what I talked about in terms of a post plus.
Exactly.
Kind of in the same category. And then I also talked about going direct to your partners, because I know you're a big fan of that. And I noticed that part of your title is events, which you don't typically see. Can you talk a little bit about how you source new partners, how you engage them, how you motivate them? How do you work with them? Yeah,
so well, first and foremost, we're a tech startup, so everyone wears every hat in the room at my company. So events also just kind of goes under in terms of my background as well. But the place of events and the merging of the two type of spaces, I think complement each other really well. Speaking to the idea here where we're actually using events to find new partners and also deepen relationships with existing ones. So again, as I'd mentioned, we're in a space that is very niche and nuanced. So we actually go to niche and nuanced events as well. So I find myself at a lot of biohacking conferences. More recently, we've actually been dabbling into the space of psychedelic assisted therapy and going to conferences in that space too. So again, we're actually kind of opening ourselves up for partnerships at each of these events because we're already kind of doing a targeting angle on them as well. So again, the event space not only really helps you kind of deepen relationships, but it also humanizes it. I mean, that's another reason why we're all here as well. There's an opportunity for us to connect at a personal level where I feel like, again, digital age and obviously pandemic playing into the space as well, with the idea that some of the spaces become cold and sterile. And I feel like doing the one-to-one, having human contact and being able to really kind of relate to people on a one-to-one basis makes it much more memorable when working with each other moving forward as well.
All right, very good. So I know we're coming up on time here, but I wanted to maybe end with reflecting on something that came up during our Partnership Economy podcast episode where you talked about kind of trusting your partners. I was reflecting on my open remarks about letting go, trust your partners. These guys are having to compete in this algorithm-controlled model. Let them connect with audiences in their unique way. Can you maybe share a little bit about your perspective on that?
Absolutely, and I knew it was the phrase that you loved the most was, I know for a fact that most of my partners are smarter than me. I have learned more from most of my partners than I've been able to teach myself. And it's the same idea too with you were mentioning before, Dave, where you have to kind of let go of the reins. These partners, they have platforms for a reason. Their audience engages with them at a very, very, I would say sometimes at a very intimate level. So you have to let them do their own spin. You give them talking points, you give them ideas, you give them, some sort of barriers, but you have to really let them, take the ball and run, and you have to trust them. And I would say my top 10 to 20 partners, I'm talking to them constantly. I'm asking them questions. They're giving me insights. They've taught me more about SEO than I've been able to even, understand, at very basic levels already. But yeah, ultimately, the partners are much smarter. You need to give them the credit that's owed, because I feel like in the past, we've been so formulaic in trying to have them read off scripts. And we know more than anything that the consumers are wising up to that as well. So we really need to kind of give them the opportunity to, like I said, take the ball and run, because the more and more you give them the trust, the more and more that's reciprocated. And again, you kind of create a more deepened and more memorable relationship with them as well.
Awesome inspiration, Ian. I appreciate you sharing your experience with all of us. Learned a lot.
Thanks for having me again, Dave.
Very good. Let's hear it for Ian, guys. Cheers.